All right, welcome VFXers. Welcome back to the second part of our Vertex Cache simulation. And one of the first things I realized that I've forgotten to do in the last section was save my scene file. So I'm going to hit save. Houdini does have a natural tendency of crashing just like any other set. And so I'm going to go ahead and save it so I just don't lose it like that. And we've got our set here. I'm going to change the name back to doorway, because I think doorway is probably going to be a better name. But this is going to be our collision object. I'm going to set the display onto that. So we have our object sitting here on our collision object. So we want to make a collision object out of that guy here. So what we can do is first open up the collision tab here. So I'm going to hit plus and then go to shelves and then identify collisions here. There we go. And then what we want to here is convert this whole dealio into a static object. So I'm going to press static object here. Then it's going to ask which object we want. I'm going to click on here. That's the object that I want. Then hit enter. And a whole bunch of things are going to happen. And it adds a whole bunch of stuff here. It adds this thing called the collision source. It adds a file cache and a VDB sub, which is actually just a null, which doesn't do a whole lot, but it does enough for us. So it's cool to go. Now, really, what this does is, if we go up a level, it added this auto DOP network. And if we DOP into here, we see our simulation being cut. This is the brains of the simulation here, and all the simulation actually happens here in this node, but we're going to do our setup in here in the destruction prep. So we've got our doorway here that we're ready to go, and we're now going to return back to the doorway. So I'm going to return this. I'm going to put I'm going to put a null here, and this null is going to be a placeholder. It doesn't do a whole lot, but it acts as just the whole door, meaning this is before anything actually blows up. And I'm going to set the color of this door. Oh, let's set it to green because it's nice and green. Yeah. Okay, so it matches that. So we've got the whole door and it's green and it's ready to rock and roll. And just like we set the display thing, what we're going to do is we are going to turn this into a rigid body. So we're not going to find it here in the collisions tab, but we are going to find this in the rigid bodies toolkit. So I'm going to hit plus. I'm going to go to shadow and I'll look for rigid bodies. Whoops! I saw it there, but it then disappeared. Scroll this down. Yeah, there we go. User error. Okay, there it is. Rigid bodies. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with this. There it is, rigid bodies. All right, cool. So we've got a whole bunch of new tools to work with here. The one we want is the rigid body fractured object. I'm going to go ahead and select this. And immediately he's going to ask what type of fractured object. And for this, what we want is a rigid body dynamics packed object. The RBD packed object. I'm going to select that, and it's going to ask me choose the object that we want to get busted up. So I'm going to press this object and hit enter, and lo and behold, more stuff got created. Now it went ahead and put in this rest, and it put in this assemble, which set up the pack primitives. So it basically set everything up. It's got the inside group and the outside group, and it created everything up for our DOP import. And so this DOP import created a whole new entry for our DOP solver here. And so I'm going to just create a another null. Well, let's put an output stop here because this is where the out is going to come from. The output, I'm going to call this door out. And I'm going to set the display onto that. Now everything's looking kind of fine here. But before we do anything, let me go over and hit Control S to save everything. I don't want it to go away. I'm going to go up and go into the auto DOP network, and then we see we have two branches coming onto here. We've got here, this is our branch for our static object. This is going to be our collision source. and we got here, which is our rigid body dynamics, and this is where our rigid body stuff is going to happen here. And so if we're going to make any additional changes to the rigid body, it's going to happen here. If we're going to make any changes to our static object or our collision object, it's going to happen here. So I'm going to go back into here, and then I'm going to template my collision, just so I know what I'm dealing with here. So it's kind of, we see it there. So let's go ahead and hit play to see what happens here. And we've got a simulation here, but it all kind of just falls aside, you know, and right through it. It didn't really collide against anything. Now that's not very fun. I don't like that at all. Boom. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to look to see what we can do and manipulate things into our collision doorway to kind of fix things up a little bit. And I'm going to look onto the doorway here, the blast. And so what we did was we blasted away the demon door. And I wonder if these arches are what's causing the problem. So what I'm going to try to do is go click this downward arrow, and I'm going to see if I can find some arches. Oh yeah, castle arch. Let's see if getting rid of that actually gets rid of anything. So I'm going to reset the simulation, and I'm going to hit play. And that doesn't look too bad. Whoa, I got lucky that time. So it was those arches that are causing the problems in my simulation. But just for sake of just for giggles, let's just suppose that the arch problem wasn't the issue, and we were playing around with this and we didn't find out what's going on with our simulation. The simulation just isn't working. You know, it wasn't working. Nothing's working. What could we possibly do? I'm going to employ a technique that I like to call convex decomposition. What is convex decomposition? Well, you notice here that this whole area is a little bit complex. It's not really that complex, but it's more complex than what we could do. What I wanted to do is really make this super simple and super small. What could I possibly do? What I'm going to do is replace. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to replace all of this complex geometry with very, very simple, super simple geometry here. So I'm going to click on my doorway here, and then I'm going to lay down, instead of this, I'm going to break apart this. So I'm going to sever the tie here. I'm going to click Y. It's going to create my scissors, snip that, and now that's going to create an error here, but that's okay. I'm going to replace all this. I'm going to replace it by very simple primitives. And now simple, what I mean is I just want a box. All right, just give me a big old box. In order to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bunch of boxes here. So I'm going to type in tab here, and I'm going to type in merge. You say, well, I thought you were going to put in a box. No, but I'm going to put a merge here because this merge is going to collect all of my boxes for me. So I'm going to click on merge here, everything like that. So I'm going to turn on the template here for this. All right. Now I'm going to throw my first box in here. So I'm going to just click in box. And very carefully, I'm going to start sculpting this low res proxy that's going to be an approximation of this exact set. So I'm going to put the box in here, and we don't see the box because this box is off in La La Land. But I got this new box in here, and I'm going to translate it into position. Now I've done the math on this before, so I know that the size of this is going to be about 7 in the X, 1 in the Y, and about 2.7 in the Z, and the center is going to be at about 25.9. The Y is going to be 84.5, and the Z is going to be at 2. Okay, look at that. we've got a box in here that kind of sits in there that approximates where the doorway is. I'm going to move this box over just a wee bit in the Z direction. And I'm going to make it just a wee bit wider in the Z. So I'll translate that to about 0.3. So it just about covers the doorway. And I'll say, yeah, okay, good to go. Now what I'm going to try to do is just make duplicates of this box. And then I'm going to start sculpting out these stairs. So I'm going to create this box here. I'm going to create a duplicate by hitting Alt, dragging that across. And I've got box 2. And I'm going to drop box 2 into this merge. Now I'm going to start sculpting box 2. Now box 2 is sitting over box 1, so I'm just going to make the size, let's see, we want the Z to basically stay in the size, but we want the Y and the X to get smaller. So X, make that smaller 1, and the Y, and then I'm going to move it over. I'm going to move that over. I'm going to change the perspective over into my this is this front side. Come on. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start modeling these stairs here. So I'm going to move this back over here. I'm going to move this over here in X. Move this over here to where it says there. Okay. So, and I'm going to drop it just a wee bit so I get a little bit of an indentation. Okay, there that is. Then I'm going to create another box here. I'm going to drop that into my merge, and then I'm going to modify the position of that box over. And I'm going to move it down. And then I'm just going to continue sculpting down this. Now, I'm going to continue sculpting on this, but I'm going to speed up my display so you guys don't have to endure me having to go and sculpt this thing one by one. And so I'm just going to continue sculpting away. So I'll click here, box 4. All right, grab this down and move this over just a wee bit. Come on. Oh, I forgot to connect it. Box 4. All right. Box 5. All right, we got box 6. All right, I'm going to drop that down to here, and I'm going to make it nice and big in the X so it covers all of this. All right, good enough. And then I'm going to duplicate box 5 again. And I am lazy, so I am going to just make the diagonal on this. So I am going to just move this on over to about here. I'm going to rotate it in my Z, so that's about 45 degrees. Yeah, I'm going to move it down. Now I'm going to move the rotation around a little bit so it's a little bit more flat. And I'm going to make it a little bit wider. All right, so that just about covers it. Bring it down just a wee bit more. All right, so we're still not there, so let's make it just a wee bit bigger. All right, so that just about gets it. Let me move this over just a wee bit. All right, so that just about covers those stairs. We don't have to get, well, this is called a vertex, a convex decomposition, and so we're just decomposing it a little bit so anything will work. And I'm going to just make a duplicate of this box 6, pull that in here, and then I'm just going to drop this guy down to here and pull it off onto the side here. Boom. Okay. So now what we have here, I'm going to return back to the perspective viewport, is a pretty good, very simplistic approximation of what we are dealing with on this side. And notice here that those lower parts here are a little bit narrower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to widen these so that they get a little bit more coverage. So I'm going to select this box and all these boxes. And then I am just going to increase the size of my X by a certain amount. Oop, that's not what I wanted. I want to increase the Z. There we go. Okay, so it's going to cover it all. So hopefully this will be big enough to cover it. And so I've got this coming through here. I don't have the doorway coming through here, but I have my convex decomposition in here going in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this display back onto the door and then see how we're dealing with this. Do we have a pretty good coverage? All right. Very good. Okay, we've got pretty good coverage on there. Excellent. Now, the convex decomposition is just much simpler to handle with in memory, and it's much faster. And so whenever you have an opportunity, whenever your collision geometry looks like it's B2 color, replace it with a convex decomposition, and your thing is guaranteed to almost always go much smoother. Okay, but let's just suppose we have a very demanding art director, and he's saying, okay, that's nice. The door is falling apart, it's thrilling, but we want it to we want to blow out at the character. We want our hero to get covered in demon door parts. So how are we going to do that? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly, we're going to do that. We're going to blow it out there. And we're going to do that by first putting in a sphere right where we want the explosion to happen. And I already have done the math on here, so I'm going to hit tab here, and I'm going to drop in a sphere SOP. And I'm going to keep it over at primitive. I'm going to change it over into polygon. And I'm going to leave this here at the origin for now. Now I'm going to just hit the display on that, and it's off in La La Land, but I'm going to go back to the origin, and we see we got the sphere right here. And so what I want to do is kind of limit the sphere, so I only wanted the other half pointing in the negative X direction, because that's basically where our door was pointed at. So I'm going to drop in a delete SOP after this, and what this is going to do is delete part of the sphere that I don't want, so it only points in the negative direction. And in order to do this, I'm going to hit the bounding volume, I'm going to enable this, and for the size, I'm going to change this to 1, and then change the Y to 3, and the Z to 3, and there's our little box there, and you see that it's actually kind of like it's clipping a bunch of things. And so I'm going to move this back just in X just a wee bit, so it's clipping half the object, so it's basically pointing in the X direction. All right, now what we're going to do is I'm going to transform this or move this back over to fit in the rest of the center of the demon. So I'm going to add my transform SOP, and so I'm going to move this over into door space, and so my translation then is going to be about 24.2. Got 88.8 and a 1.8, and if we hit this, and there it is right in the center of our demon object. And let me go ahead and put my template for the demon object, the door. And there is the explosion right outside the doorway here. Well, I want to try to make it a little bit taller, so the explosion is a little bit longer. So I'm going to scale the Y just a little bit, and I'm going to drop the Y just a little bit more, so it's a little bit more capsule-like. All right. This sphere is basically going to show the projectile direction of where we want our stuff to go. But in order to do that, we have to kind of hint at the doorway on where it wants to explode. So we're going to have to put an initial velocity on there. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to add an initial velocity. But before we know what the velocity is, we have to kind of like tell it where the normal is. Surface normals are what we need, so I'm going to go ahead and add a normal SOP. And so you say, okay, great, what did that do? Well, notice here that it didn't have normals on before. I'm going to click on the normals. They were only at the vertices, but now I click that, and so now we definitely have definitive normals, and so we know we have normals to work with here. And so what I'm going to do is then do a little bit of baby programming. Now, don't fear, this isn't going to hurt, I promise you. I'm just going to add a point wrangle. So instead of a point SOP here, I'm going to go point wrangle. And we'll put the display on here, and this is going to give us a little bit more control here. So I'm going to type in an expression right here. I'm going to say v at v equals v at n times ch, and I'm going to put strength in quotes, and I'm going to terminate this way. So this is a Vex expression, and so what I'm saying is, okay, we've got a vector called v, for velocity, equals the vector, which is the normal, multiplied by strength. And that's all it is. Say take the normal of the object and apply that towards the velocity, the initial velocity we want the simulation to start at, and assign it to a value of v, which is velocity. So we'll just take the normal value, multiply it by a thing called strength, and then assign it to the velocity. And with that, we're also going to apply an offset, because I noticed that this is pointed off in the x direction. How do I know this? Well, you can see the little gnomon there. This is pointing at the positive x direction is that way, so the negative direction is that way. So I wanted to bias a little bit more x offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bias the x offset. So I'm going to go at v 0, which is, in other words, for the x direction, plus equals ch, and I'm going to call it x offset. Okay, we have this thing called ch strength and c alpha. These actually stand for channels. You're going, wait, where did these channels come from, strength and offset? Now, don't worry, we're going to add those right here. And we're going to add them by clicking this little plus dealio here. Now, when we play with this plus dealio, what this is going to do is going to create sliders for all of the extra channels that we just created. We created the strength channel and the offset channel. If I hit this plus there, it's going to create new channels for the both of them. And see, there they are, strength and offset. I'm going to put the strength here at 3 and the x offset there at -2 because I want it to go in the negative x direction. So now that I've got my velocities pointing off into the directions that I want to, now I have to just apply those velocities to the doorway. And we do that by creating an attribute transfer SOP. And we do that by, I'm going to click on here, I'm going to say attribute transfer. Okay. And okay, this is the geometry to transfer to and the geometry to transfer 1. So this one comes from there and this one goes to here. And I'm going to plug this one right in here. Oop, we lost that connection. And so this is where it's going to, which is going to the doorway. And we're coming from the sphere here, and we're going to put it all right into there. And so therefore, we're going to leave that as is. Make sure, I'm going to double check this here. Make sure that the U goes to the, even though the velocity is only, select the doorway prep and the initial state. All right, now we've got that attribute. We've clicked that in the attribute transfer. Okay, let's wire the package to this point wrangle. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay. Now believe it or not, we're still not done yet. So if we go ahead and play this, it still isn't going to work yet. So what we have to do is we have to tell the simulation to use the point velocity as its basis. So I'm going to go up a level into the auto-dop network, and you notice here that the RBD thing, it's spazzing out. It doesn't like it. It's not happy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, inherit velocity from point velocity. Now I'm going to read this and figure out what is my problem. It says error auto-dop cannot create or overwrite attributes out. Okay. Dop import output and path. So let's go up here again. So hopefully we can go into there. Dop import. We go here. Dop import. Okay, and I got a little bit of a situation. Let me try to think of what is causing this. Okay, let me think what we got to do here. Let me just pop up back here, back to the auto-dop network, make sure that this is displayed. Okay, that's looking good. This is displayed. This is displayed. Okay, everything is going fine. Everything's looking good. Okay, everything looks great. I think we're just having a registration of memory error. So I'm going to click back up, go back up into the destruction prep. All right, so here's our object. So let's we hit display, and there we go. Now notice there, it's blowing out. Here, okay. Now if we wanted to, we could have a lot of fine-tuning and corrections to actually blow this out. Now if we wanted to blow out even more, what we could do is actually put the strength up here to maybe 4. Return this, and it's really going to blow out far. And because it's blowing out so far, we might want it to go more in a negative x direction. So I'm going to say -3. So this is really going to blow out far. Okay, notice now that it's still starting to break up into like little groups here. And it's still a little bit too regular. And I suppose I didn't want it to be that regular. I want it to really look kind of wild here. So if I took that normal here and change things around a bit, let's see what happens if I put a mountain sop in here. Now this is going to change things up and make things look a little bit radical. Where's our sphere here? And so it makes the sphere look a little bit bumpy here. So if we add just a little bit more bump and we change our element size to something like this, and change our scale. Let's change the scale into the Z. Let it go to there. All right. Now let's add the frequency. Where's my frequency? The max octaves, noise type, lacularity. Let's see, instead of the simplex, improve Perlin, let's go for something crazy like alligator noise. Give me some alligator noise here. Yeah, there we go. Yep, that's really crazy. Maybe it's too much. Maybe that's too crazy. Yeah, that's too crazy. Alligator was too a bit nutso. Let's just go to simple Perlin noise. I've always had good luck with Perlin noise. And so there's some irregularities. And the scale, the pulse time. Let's try the element size. No. Let's just go ahead and make this like that. It's still looking kind of looking normal like. Okay, here we go. Oh, that's some crazy looking crap. That's some crazy looking stuff. So let's return the simulation back to normal. Put the doorway display out there. Let's just blast it out and see what happens here. Hit the display and all right. So it's still blasting out. Let's push this forward just a wee bit more. So I'm going to hit my X offset and make that -4. Oh, -5? Is that what I want? Let's try -4 to see what happens. I've got -4, and it's still blowing out, towards it. All right, now we could spend all day playing with this, but because I don't have a reference file, I'm not going to use this. So let's just say this is where we want our simulation to work from. And let's just say our art director is happy, and we're ready to rock and roll. All right, we are now ready to do the output. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Yes. Okay, we've got our simulation going, and we are ready to now move. So I'm going to go up, and then I am going to place in an output. So, where does this actually simulation go? I'm going to have to control the timing. So it looks good, right about to here. And so things start getting normal, like right around here. Like, let's just say it goes to frame 120. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just limit my length here. So that goes to frame 120, so that the whole thing only simulates from 1 to 120. All right, so I'm going to lay down a ROP network, ROP network. This is our output network. And I'm going to say chunks out. So this is going to output all the chunks. Go ahead, double click into that. Now we are going to use the side effects labs, and we're going to use that VAT operator. So I'm going to type in here and type Vertex animation textures. Yeah, there it is. Okay, there's where we have it. Okay, so before we hit anything, what I'm going to do is set this up to take advantage of it. So the method that we're going to use here is the rigid body. And we're going to initialize this to make sure it's for UE4. And our SOP path is we are going to put in the actual path of our simulation. Remember, we set it out to be door out to be our SOP that we wanted to export from. So I'm going to click this over here, and then I'm going to navigate right here to door out. All right, I'll export my relative path and hit accept. And there's the pathway right there. Now I'm going to leave everything as it exists for normal here. I'm going to leave these because Houdini's going to set this. Now for the export, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to give it a special name. I'm going to call this explode door. And for my component, and I'm just going to call it explode door again. This is what the name of things, everything. But I'm going to leave everything as it is. I'm going to want a geometry. I'm going to want position, and I'm going to want rotation. Go ahead and leave position 2 selected and real-time data selected. But that's all I want for now. So hit Control S to save it off. And then I'm going to hit render. And Houdini's going to think for a little bit. And what it's doing now, it's going to output the geometry, and it's going to create the texture maps. Okay, there it all goes. Boom, boom, boom. It did it. So what did it actually do? Let's take a look at our project file to actually see what actually happened. Now I'm going to bring in a file browser. I'm going to go off into my folder here of where I have my project. Coursework. Nope. I want lectures, Houdini. We called this the Vertex Cache demo. And here it is. Export, explode door. Okay, it created 3 folders here. We've got the materials folder, the meshes folder, and the textures folders. If we go inside the meshes, we should see an explode door mesh FBX. This is actually going to where we're going to have our exploded chunks here. And if we go up a level, if our textures, we're going to have 2 textures here: explode door _ pos.exr and explode door _ rot.exr. And in case you didn't know this, EXR is a very, very fancy file format that Pixar created, Pixar and ILM created in order to store high resolution and high detailed imagery. So it's basically a way of storing extra amount of information inside of your super high res texture maps. And so we've got everything we need to do in order to take this back to UE4. Ultimato. Okay, let's go back to UE4. let's go back to our scene. I'm going to go all the way up to the content. I'm going to create a brand new folder here, and I'm going to call this, let's call it, what do we call it? Oh, let's just call it Vertex Cache, because that's what's going on here. We've got a Vertex Cache here. I'm going to double click that. I'm going to first import in the mesh. So I'm going to click Import to Game Vertex Cache, and then I'm going to navigate all the way to my Houdini project, Vertex Cache Demo, Export, Explode Door, Meshes, and Explode Door Mesh FBX. Okay, now I'm going to leave everything as default, except there's one thing I want to try to do it, and this is like actually very super important. Make sure where it says Vertex Color Import option, make sure to put that to override. Okay, that is because valuable information for the Vertex Colors is going to store information. So Vertex Colors is actually going to have some very important stuff coming in. So make sure that that is override. And otherwise, you're going to leave that everything else as default. So go ahead and click Import All. And it's red and green. We've got the inside material and the outside material, two different materials. So that's good. That's exactly what we're looking for. Now, if we double click Explode Door Mesh, we see it's way over there because it's still in world space. And then we have it looks like it swapped our things. We've got the inside, or the outside material is green and the inside material is red. Okay, everything is looking good. So everything is looking at outside material and the inside material is on the inside. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit save and then close that up. Now the next thing we want to try to do is bring in the two texture maps. So I'm going to right click in there and say import into game. And I'm going to navigate up to textures and I'm going to select both my EXR files and click open. Now we do have to do a little bit of alteration on that. So I'm going to click on the Explode Door pause. And I'm going to make sure that the compression setting is a vector displacement. And let's see. And for the, what are we looking for? Let's see, the filter type, the axis, lossy, compression quality. What are we going to change? The one thing we got to look for the texture filter. I can't remember where it is. Filter. I'm going to change from default. Change that to nearest. Okay, that's all I wanted to change. All right, I'm going to hit save. All right, we've got the save. We got the Explore.pause. Now let's get the rot. Okay, we're going to change this into vector displacement. And where is that filter path again? I cannot find it. Oh, filter. Here we go. Here it is. Go to nearest. Click save. And then we should be good to go. All right. Now, the first thing we have to do in order to bring this thing is we have to build our material. And our material is going to be, it's kind of complicated. But Houdini kind of helps us with that. So I'm going to go back to Houdini. And I'm going to change my interface where it says user interface simple. I'm going to change that to user interface normal. And I'm going to scroll down here. And they just basically added a few more tabs here at the bottom. And where it says sample shader code, you'll see there's a little plus sign where it says rigid vertex material function. Click the plus. And you see a whole bunch of text here. Don't worry about the text. But what I want you to do is just click inside of there. Hit Control-A to select the whole thing. Control-C to select and copy the whole thing, and then return back to UE4. Once we're inside of here, what we're going to do is create a material function. So right-click in here and say, click here, Materials and Textures, Material Function. There we go, MF. And then I'm going to call this, Vertex Cache _ MF for my material function. All right, I'm going to double click to go into that. All right, we don't need this output result, so go ahead and hit delete. Yes, we don't want that. Why do we hit delete? Because we're going to replace it with some really cool stuff. Instead, make sure to click inside of it and then hit Control V to paste everything we have in our buffer. And look at all that. Houdini, those guys, Luis Corel and those guys at Houdini created our function for us. And so, wow, look at all this stuff. Now here is the guts of all of our material function. This is what we want. And so what we're going to do is make sure that this is available to all of our other materials. So I'm going to press Expose to Library, and that is going to make it available. And then where it says Library Categories, I'm going to call this Vertex Cache. And here I'm going to click Save. So it is available. All right, excellent. So now that we have our material function, what we have to do is create a material for it. So let's go ahead and create a material. And so right click on here, click on the material. And then I'm going to call this Vertex Cache _ M. All right. I'm going to dock that up here. I'm going to put this off to the side. And before we do anything on here, if we take a look at our material function, the material function says we need to create 2 more custom data. We need to have 3 custom data and make sure that our tangent space normals are false. So I'm going to click onto here and say tangent. And so here's our tangent space normals. Currently they're true. I'm going to make sure that they're false on there. I'm going to get rid of this spline here. And then I'm going to look for custom. So I'm going to say, type in the word CUSTOM. So number of custom UVs, I'm going to make sure that that is 3. Okay. Now that we've updated our material, let's go ahead and drag in our material function. So if we just right click in here and type in Vertex Cache, we see here's our Vertex Cache material function. Go ahead and drop that in here. Then we're just going to start connecting things up. I'll click my normal to the normal, my world position offset to the world position offset, my custom UV1 to custom UV1, and custom UV2 to custom UV2. All right, don't worry that it says error. We're going to get some more information here to get rid of that error. And so I'm going to dock this off to the side, and then I'm going to grab my position texture, and then I'm going to grab my rotation texture. I'm going to dock that back up there. I'm going to pull into this. And then I'm going to try to connect this to the position texture here, and it doesn't go. Okay, that's right. I have to convert this into a texture object. So I'm going to right-click on this guy and say Convert to Texture Object. I'm going to convert this to a texture object. And so I'm just going to grab this guy and put this right here. And I'll grab my rotation, put this right here. And then we just need to add just a couple more parameters so that we can make this a more dynamic function. So I'm going to create a scalar parameter. I'll type in here, scalar parameter. And we need a scalar parameter here for speed. So I'm going to put the speed in there. Hook that up to speed. And I want something for our base color here. So I'm going to grab a texture parameter. So texture sample parameter 2D. That's what we want. And I'm going to call that base color. And then I'm going to pump that right into base color there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And so now this is looking kind of crazy. Don't worry about it. We're going to change that right away. So I'm going to turn back up into here, and then I'm going to create 2 instances of my material function, one for the inside and one for the outside. So where's my material? Here, my Vertex Cache material. I'm going to right-click and create a material instance, and I'm going to call this explode door underscore exterior. I'll call it M. material instance. And then I'm going to double click. And I'm going to go, first I'm going to do is make sure my base color. Now, this is for the exterior, so we had our demon door. So I'm going to look up my demon door texture. My demon door texture, here it is. And now what I want is to turn on the number of frames. So click that on. Then I want the position min, the position max, the pivot min, the pivot max, and I'm going to want my speed. Now, these are all some wild numbers. Now, where do we get these? Once again, this is going to be where we're going to return to Houdini. Houdini is going to give these numbers for us. So I'm going to click on Houdini, and I'm going to scroll back up, and lo and behold, here's all our numbers. So here's our frame range, and here's our speed. So a frame range is 119, and I'm going to copy the speed number, and then I'm going to go back to UE4, and then for the speed, I'm going to put that number in there. And then for the number of frames, I'm going to put 119. Now I'm going to just do the same thing for the position min, position max, the pivot min, and the pivot max. So here's my position max. I'm going to copy that value and plug that right in here. And take my position min, pop that value right into here. Don't worry that the display is going ape nuts. It's all gonna work out in the long run, I promise you. Then I'm gonna grab my pivot max, paste that into here, and then my pivot min, and paste that into here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. All right, cool. So there's my demon door from the outside, my exterior. And so what I'm going to do is I spent a lot of time and effort into that. So I'm going to create a duplicate of that for the interior. So I'm going to hit select this and hit Control W to create a duplicate of it. And I'm going to rename this one interior underscore MI. Okay, I'm going to double click to go into my interior. And now I don't want the demon door, I don't want this to be the inside. I want to use that granite material that I used kind of before for the other door. So where is it? So I'm going to look for stone. Oh yeah, sandstone, T-Rock sandstone. That looked pretty good last time. I'm going to put that in. I'm going to use that as the default texture for the inside. So I'm going to hit press save. And then, all right. Okay, so here we are at the demon door here. And so we have a new object and we want to replace this here. So so the old demon door, I'm not going to delete right for now. I'm just going to hide. So I'm going to click this and click invisible, and it's going to be, and you'll see that it just kind of disappears here. All right. Now I'm going to just grab my new mesh, and I'm just going to drop it into the scene. But it's nowhere to be seen. Why is that? It's nowhere to be seen because it's now in Houdini space, and we need to translate it back into the world space here. And so all we have to do is zero out our locations here. So I'm going to type 0, 0, 0, and there's our demon door. Now notice that it still has our default exterior material and our interior side. So I'm going to replace those with the two materials that I just created. So the outside material, I'm going to go exterior. And the inside, I'm going to replace with this. Oh, wow. Holy moly. Wow. Well, look at that. It is just way too much. This is just way too crazy. This was not expected. Okay, so what I need to do is go back into Houdini and reduce the size of my simulation. It is way too nutso. I'm going to return this back to the where it was before. So what I'm going to do here is go back to my simulation. Okay, these numbers are going to change. So I'm going to go back up into my destruction prep. This is way too crazy. And so here, I'm going to knock this down to 3 and then -1. And so how does this look? Alright, so therefore it looks a little bit more sane. So I'm going to go ahead and file, save this. I'm going to go ahead and then rewind this. So it chunks out. Come over here. I'm going to double click to go inside. Whoops. Come on. Nope, nope, nope. Uh-oh, I think I destroyed Houdini. I think I pulled too much. It's a good thing that I saved it ahead of time. So I'm going to go back up in here. Pull Houdini. Figure this was bound to happen. We pushed it just a little bit too hard. Alright, we've got Houdini back up in here. So I'm going to return back to my recent project, Vertex Cache demo. And then I'm going to open my recent file. That's Vertex Cache demo 1. Discard and open. Maybe I've got too many pieces there. Where was it, at 500? Maybe I should make it a little bit simpler and make it only 200. And once we know that it is working, let's see if we can do this. So it's 500 right now, so let's just make it 200 to make sure that we know that it's working. And then if we want to, we can increase it. Okay, so there it goes. 200. 200 it is. Go ahead, file, save. All right, so now it's at 200. Okay, there we go. And where is this going to go? Okay, so let's go back up to the ROP network. Okay, there we are. We're going to go initialize for engine. We got everything reinitialized. We've got everything explode door. We're going to write over this whole thing again. So I'm just going to save. And I'm going to go back up into the Houdini. I'm going to render. Okay, it basically went ahead and re-exported everything. So I'm going to go back into UE4, and then my mesh has changed radically. So I'm going to click this, right-click it, and say Reimport, and that's going to re-import, and this is going to make things look really wild. And so I'm going to go ahead and my two textures are going to change too. So I'm going to re-import my position texture, re-import with a new re-import, and then I'm going to go re-import. Okay, now we're going to have new values for my position min and position max. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my position max, Control C, take this over here, and where is my exterior? Okay, position max. Okay, it's going to change a little bit, so we're going to go back into Houdini. Control C, this is going to change a little bit. All right, and I'm going to grab my rotate max. Go back to UE4, rotate max. And then I'm going to go back into the Houdini one more time, grab this. There's my rotation min. Put this back in here. Okay. Now I'm going to press save. And I don't want to have to type in all that again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this. Force my delete my interior object. And then I'm going to create a duplicate of my exterior. And I'm going to call this interior. Underscore MI. And then I'm going to set this to my stone. Sandstone. Good. Say, oh, that's the normal. We don't want that. Sandstone. We want the diffuse. There you go. Now I'll click back to Elven Ruins, and then I'm going to drop my inside material right into there. And it's still going a little bit nutso. Okay, yeah, I realized what I just did. I imported my material, my mesh door object incorrectly. So I'm going to go ahead and re-import it the best way. So I've got it. I cleaned it out of there. The whole of the wall is still there. So I'm going to right-click in here, import Vertex Cache into the mesh. And what I told you to do is where it says Vertex Color Import Option. I told you to put override, and I was wrong. It's not override, it's replace. When you put override, it replaces it with this color, and I don't want that color. I need the color that was inside coming from Houdini, so I need to be replaced. Okay, my bad. So I click Import All. All right, it's got its error here, so I'm going to go ahead and drop this back in here. I'm going to zero out all its transformations. All right, I'm going to give it a exterior material and an interior material, and lo and behold. Okay, looks like we need to build the lighting here again, but as you can see, we have a much more dynamic and fluid control, and we have a lot more control over the experience. Now, some of the pieces here are still looking like a little nutty, a little bit, so we might have to tweak our simulation to kind of like prevent a little bit of this nutso activity going on. I don't know, maybe the chunks are a little bit too small in certain places and too large in other places, so it's kind of hard to tell. So I would go back and forth to Houdini and kind of tweak this up a little bit until it fine-tuned just right. But as you can see, I laid down the foundation for you to do back and forth, and we can go in and manipulate this as much as we want until the art director gets exactly what he wants. And so that is it for Vertex Cache material. So it's a little bit longer, and it takes a little bit more time to control, but in the end, it gives you far more control in the end, and you can pretty much get exactly what you want if you're willing to put in a little bit of extra time. So thank you very much for the Vertex Cache, and if you have any questions, contact me. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And otherwise, I'll see you next week.